Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
This is Captain Tim Polbeck from the Sheboygan Fire Department, and you are listening to Dr. Richard Gasaway on SA Matters Radio. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple: to help you see the bad things coming and time to avoid bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from Glide, Oregon, where I'm in town delivering 7 situational awareness programs over a 7-day period at 3 venues across Oregon. Thank you to Lebanon Fire, Douglas County Fire District No. 2, and Bend Fire for hosting these programs and allowing me to share this critical message with your members. In today's feature segment, I interview Hagerstown Fire Chief Chief Lohr about initiatives his department are working on to improve safety. Hey, if you missed episodes 103 and 104, you're going to want to go back and give them a listen. I interviewed Captain Eric Dryman of the Indianapolis Fire Department. Captain Dryman, then Lieutenant Dryman, survived a flashover. I know you're thinking, right? Survived the flashover? But he did. Maybe if only by luck. But you're going to want to hear his amazing story. And be sure to check out the pictures on the show notes page on the SAMatters.com website. Click on the podcast episodes for 103 and 104. Before I jump into today's feature segment, I'd like to take a moment to thank the departments and the organizations that have hosted some recent Situational Awareness Matters tour stops. Your effort to bring this valuable and powerful training on situational awareness and high-risk, high-consequence decision-making to your members and others in your region are greatly appreciated. So recent tour stops included the Fire Department Instructors Conference in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I delivered a half-day pre-conference session on flawed situational awareness, the Texas A&M Forest Service Agency Retreat in San Antonio, Texas, where I did a half-day on flawed situational awareness and a half-day leadership workshop for them. And then a Company Officer Development Institute program in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And of course, where I am now in Oregon, delivering programs for Lebanon Fire District, Douglas County Fire District No. 2, and Bend Fire Department. If you're interested in joining me for an upcoming Situational Awareness Matters tour stop, on May 11th through 14th, I'm doing a 4-day tour of Alabama, sponsored by the Alabama Fire College, and we will be in Orange Beach on May 11th, Trussville, Alabama on May 12th, and Decatur, Alabama on May 13 and May 14. On May 17, I'll be in Rancho Cucamonga, California, doing a program for Red Helmet training. On May 19th, in the San Francisco Bay Area, doing a program for Fire Nuggets. On May 31 through June 1, I'll be in Calgary, Alberta, keynoting and doing breakouts for the Alberta Fire Chiefs Association Conference. June 3rd, I'll be in Tucson, Arizona, doing a fundraiser for the PEMA Interagency Group for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Then on June 6th, I'm staying over in Tucson to do an encore program for PEMA Interagency Council on Monday, June 6th. On June 9th, I'll be doing a program for the Spokane Fire Department in Washington. June 10th, the Montana Fire Alliance Conference. June 16th, Brighton Area Fire District in Michigan. June 17th, Eastern Michigan University School of Police and Fire Staff and Command Executive Leadership Program. June 22nd, the Texas Intrastate Mutual Aid Association Conference. June 24 and 25, the Cy-Fair Fire Department in Texas. And then I'm going to take 10 days off and enjoy some time with my family. So thanks so much to those departments who have hosted programs, and here's hoping there'll be a tour stop near you, and we'll get a chance to meet up. Earlier this year, while delivering programs in southwest Minnesota, I had an opportunity to stop and visit my sponsor, Midwest Fire. And while I was there, I got a chance to talk to some of their staff about what separates Midwest from their competitors. So let's listen to an interview I had with account executive Dalton Lingbeck as he talked about their Create a Spec feature. All right, Dalton. So a lot of the people who attend my programs are volunteer firefighters who have full-time jobs and full-time lives and raising their kids and working second jobs and doing the fire department, and clearly their time is stretched. So how, if they had an interest in a Midwest Fire apparatus, how do they reach you, and what's the process? I mean, how difficult is this? How much time is this going to take if they want to learn more about how to build a Midwest fire truck?
Well, that's a good question. We try and make it as easy as possible because a lot of our customers, if not the majority of our customers, are volunteer firefighters, and they do have a hard time of finding time in a day to reach out to us. So if you ever go to our website and you're searching around and you really want to talk to us but you just can't get on the phone, we have a couple ways of doing this. The first part is we actually have a call request button where you can go on there, you can click on it, you can tell us when and what number to call you on at the best time. That's really easy for us to reach out at the moment you want us to, when you're best available. The second thing is we do a Create a Spec. So on our website, you can actually click a button that's called Create a Spec, and you can build the truck that you are trying to spec out. And what that does, it doesn't give you the full truck, it doesn't give you a price, but it sends us a specification in-house. So what we can do with that is we can have your information to call you with, but before that, we have a spec in hand. We can make notes. We can start developing some ideas. So when we call you, it's an efficient call. It doesn't take up a lot of your time, and it's at the right moment.
And this Create a Spec, is there like drop-down options? Like, you know, I'm guessing like when I purchased fire trucks, sometimes I didn't even know what I wanted, and sometimes I didn't even know the options of what were available. So is this kind of talk me through, you know, the different decisions that need to be made in developing a spec? Because I would guess that there are people out there that would be scratching their head saying, I'm not really sure that I know what I need or want. So how interactive is this in walking you through this?
Well, it's a page-by-page process. So we kind of start out with the size of your truck, and we go on to different options. We try to make it as simple as possible for you to get the point across. Basically what it does is, like it says, a page-by-page process. You choose your options. We lead you in a direction that you need to go. So it's not one big page of just a bunch of stuff that you need to choose. Okay.
But there are options listed there to be able to choose from.
Yeah, if you're not writing anything out, there are comment boxes where you can write little comments if you need to, but we give you the options, little drop-down, little check boxes.
Are you, on this Create a Spec, are you getting as specific as to say, I want this first compartment to be so many inches wide by so many inches tall by so many inches deep? Are they getting that in depth in the Create a Spec, or is it something that's just a little simpler that allows them to do kind of like a high level description of what they want in a truck?
It's a little simpler. It's more of a high level idea. When it comes to compartment sizes, that's more for engineering to figure out. But you can, like I said, in the comment boxes, there are sections where you can say, you know, I want high side compartments, I want full head compartments on this side. There's a lot of options for you to choose that.
Okay, so they go to MidwestFire.com, and then on there is a Create a Spec tab or link.
Yep, you'll see one on the top right corner, and if you scroll down the main page, you'll see one underneath our video. There's plenty of options for you to find it. It's just here to catch your eye, and when you see some trucks on our website that you like, feel free to fill one out.
Yep, there you go. Go to MidwestFire.com, check out Create a Spec, and see how easy it is to build a truck, and then have a follow-up consultation about your needs. Thank you, Sarah Atchison, and all the staff at Midwest Fire for your awesome commitment to improving first responders' safety. I sincerely appreciate your support of my mission as well. Hey, if you're interested in attending an upcoming Situational Awareness Matters tour stop, head over to the SAMatters.com website and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage that says Upcoming Events. More than 500 agencies on 4 continents have hosted Situational Awareness Matters tour stop events. Has your agency? No? Oh, please. Don't wait until you've had a near miss or a casualty event. Be proactive and get your program scheduled. If you're interested in hosting a Situational Awareness Matters tour stop in 2016, contact me through the SAMatters.com website. Click on the Contact Us link. We'll get something set up for you. I should note that I'm actively booking 2017 programs now, too. So if you're interested in something way off in 2017, now's the time to get your dates secured. Here's a tip for how you can host a program at a reduced cost. I schedule many what I call companion programs. These are programs on adjoining days to other programs. So if you see that I'm delivering a program within a couple hours of your department and think you might want to tag along as a companion, contact me. You can save as much as 20% off the program cost by being a companion to an existing program. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment, my interview with Hagerstown, Maryland Fire Chief Chief Lohr. I'm super excited today to have Chief Lohr, the Fire Chief of Hagerstown Fire Department, with me. I met up with Chief Lohr about a month ago when I was in Hagerstown. I was visiting a friend of mine, Will Ball, who's a firefighter in Hagerstown, and he reached out to Chief Lohr and told him that I was going to be in town, and Chief Lohr took me to lunch, and we had a great conversation about the things that he's doing in Hagerstown, and I was so inspired by those things. I asked him if he would be willing to come on and be a guest on the podcast show, and he immediately agreed, and I'm just super excited to have you here. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Rich. If you're excited, I'm honored to be a participant here where we can spread the good news of what's happening here in Hagerstown.
Outstanding. Let's start by just give us some of your backstory about your history in the fire service. I mean, in your own right, you're very, very well known in the fire service, but there might be some listeners who don't know you or are new to the fire service. So kind of fill in the backstory.
Well, coming out of high school, like many listeners probably, I was very active in the volunteer end of the business in Washington County, Maryland. Quickly, rose through the ranks and just loved what I was doing, whether it was going to fires, whether it was taking care of people in medical needs, etc. So that quickly led to what I would describe as a link between higher education and the fire service, which was very popular. This is in 1971, 72. So I've been doing this for more than a minute in one place or another. And all along the way, finished a fire protection engineering degree at the University of Maryland, hired and worked in Montgomery County, Maryland, where I finished a 30-year career in 2014. Now, sprinkle in with that all kind of assigned jobs, everything from firefighter to battalion chief on the operational end, and later on as fleet chief, where a lot of people around the country know me from, the first uniform fleet chief in Montgomery County. 5 years as operations chief, a little over 2 years as fire chief in Montgomery County, suburb of Washington, D.C., about 1,200 employees, and another 200 administrative professionals. Retired at the end of December of 2014 with 30, and as my wife likes to say, I quickly failed retirement. An opportunity presented itself here in Hagerstown, my hometown where I live, a much smaller department, but I accepted the fire chief's position here in the end of June last year. So I'm just closing in a 10-month service here.
And describe the demographics of Hagerstown, population, station, staffing, budget, those kind of things.
Well, we spend about $7 million a year operationally here in Hagerstown, which is a 12 square mile municipality with 39,000, almost 40,000 residents. Much different than Montgomery County, which was 500 square miles, 37 stations, and a $218 million budget. So it's kind of the tale of two cities. Here in Hagerstown, we have 7 companies, 5 engines, 2 ladders, and a shift commander. And the grand extent of the administrative support here is the fire chief, a administrative manager, civilian, and collateral duties that are assigned out amongst the various members of staff here. So we have minimum 1 on-duty shift commander and 15 operational firefighters spread amongst 7 companies. Quite different than what I was used to.
All right, 15 firefighters spread among 7 companies. Trying to do the math here. What's the staffing on each piece of apparatus?
The minimum staffing on the 5 engines, 2 ladders, regrettably, is 2 persons. This is a long-standing legacy issue here in Hagerstown. In fact, until about a decade ago, it was driver only with volunteer supplement responding from home. The volunteer system, like many places in the country, is struggling here. We have a handful of really competent, trained, certified, and practiced volunteers, but regrettably, that system is showing great signs of strain and can't be relied on around the clock. So we have to get better at what we do with what we have.
What's that mean?
Well, what I think it means is exactly what we were talking about when you were here, Rich, is that everybody has to be trained, certified, and practiced at their job. More importantly, I have to make sure that every single member of the department, whether they have 1 minute on the job or 30 years, really has to be trained and aware of their surroundings. You know, they've been a very successful fire department here, running 1 or 2 pre-connected tack lines into a building that's on fire in really old legacy construction. Hagerstown is a old industrial town that dates back to the mid-1800s in terms of its heyday. 5 different railroads, a lot of industry, a lot of taxpayer-type buildings, and grand homes in those days that had now been converted to 4, 5, 6, up to 9 apartment units, and buildings that were built as either duplexes or large single-family homes. It really doesn't get any riskier for a group of firefighters than that, in my opinion.
Now, I don't know if anything has changed in the arena of staffing or how they respond yet, but when you got there, if they had a working fire in one of these converted legacy mansion type homes, and I've seen them, I know exactly what you're talking about, that have been turned into apartments. What kind of total response? How many people on the total response would we be talking about that would come from Hagerstown, like on the first alarm to something like that?
Well, generally, they would dispatch 3 engines and 2 trucks. That's 10 personnel of the on-duty 15. If any of those units arrived on the scene, it was common practice for the shift commander to upgrade the assignment immediately to a what they call safety dispatch, and bring the remaining units from the city, which was 2 more engines, and assemble all 15 or 16 personnel on the fireground. Like many places in the nation, a series of events would then take place, transfer companies into the city. Automatic aid is present here, so sometimes we would have some help from Washington County companies that either were properly staffed or not. We've seen examples of both. And somewhere along the way, we managed to assemble 20, 25 personnel on the scene to handle most of these incidents.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the coming in? What were some of your safety concerns? And talk us through some of the plans that you either have implemented or things that you're working on now to improve the safety of the members.
Well, like many organizations, large or small, I saw some evidence that we had some complacency in place. My personal experience, based on many, many years, regardless of the department, is complacency kills. If you go back and do after actions of just about any bad outcome event in the history of the United States Fire Service, if you look close enough, you will find clear evidence of complacency. So the first thing I did was meet with all personnel, both jointly and individually. And I continue to do that, open up communications, set clear expectations that no building is worth the life of a firefighter. The classic risk assessment model that we've all trained to, which is, we will risk a lot to save a savable life, but we're not going to risk a lot to save a vacant or abandoned building, which we have more than a few of here in Hagerstown. Now, that was a culture change here. And clearly, there was some personnel who, really didn't agree with that notion. They were in the legacy model of what they want the fire service to be: fast, responsive, put the fire out at all costs, etc. So I would have to say, to directly answer your question, Dr. Gasaway, is that, we took immediate action to both teach and practice situational awareness and risk assessment.
And how did you talk me through how you did that?
Well, shift meetings. I initiated a biweekly command staff briefing where the 3 battalion chiefs that comprise the command staff and the 3 captains that work for them and the fire marshal, senior fire marshal, meets with the fire chief, and we talk through problems. It was clear that our SOG regarding firefighting, although was consistent with many of the things we like to see, how to run a line, how to throw ground ladders, how to position on the fire ground, all those things they've had great success with here on what I would describe as fires up to and including 2 rooms and some change. It's also my experience, and I don't mean this in any critical or negative way, but given the resources the city has provided the fire chief and the on-duty people, if they show up and it's more than that, they struggled to change their game plan. It was generally an offensive firefight regardless of what presented them. They would stay in that fight until they couldn't. They would then withdraw and transition to a more a defensive position, sometimes with master stream, sometimes without. So one of the drills that I always ran, and I ran it here in the first 30 days, was unannounced. 2 engines in the ladder, show up in a parking lot, place 4 traffic cones, roughly 60 by 160. Any way you want to get it done. Establish an uninterrupted water supply. Provide flow to the elevated stream at maximum elevation, and paint that area of 60 by 160 with water, and include either moving or knocking down the 4 corner cones. Now, in my mind, that was to simulate a rooftop of a garden apartment or a reasonable-sized commercial building in the city limits. Lot lines here are about 50 by 180. Most of the buildings don't fill the entire lot line. But that was a representative example. Do they position correctly? Can they get a stream going, elevated stream in a reasonable time? And can they move that stream to be able to knock down a runaway fire in the attic space where they can't get to with hand lines? And good news, they had very efficient results with a couple exceptions. So I think that was the first opportunity that we had to say, well, it's not always pre-connect and a backup pre-connect, that we have to be practiced at other skills, and that's just one of them.
Now, let me back up for just a moment as you were talking about the historic tactics of going down the route of an interior fire attack and then struggling some with the transition if the fire was not able to be controlled timely as a result of those efforts. Had there been, as you know, some near miss events as a result of perhaps being slow to make those transitions historically that you're aware of?
Well, certainly, the firefighters here in Hagerstown have been run out of some of the larger commercial buildings when they were in progress with an aggressive interior attack and had to transition, and sometimes they were good outcomes, sometimes they were not. There has not been an excessive number of injuries here, but there have been a few that would raise the hair on the back of any fire chief's neck that, hey, maybe this isn't the best idea, and this is what we would describe as near miss. Mm-hmm. Whether it was exposure to fire products, smoke, coming close to running out of air, people with orthopedic injuries because they were probably trying to do too much at one time by themselves, and certainly time and time again, people operate without the ability to have teams in place and to be able to communicate as teams with clear expectations.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had said earlier about an effort to bring about a cultural change in the department, and my experience of trying to change the culture in two organizations that I had the pleasure to give leadership to took me a long time, like 7 years, to make the turn where I thought, we now have a culture that is more in alignment with what I, aspired it to become. Have you experienced a great success or some challenges in trying to shift this culture? Talk me through some of that.
Well, I would say a little bit of both. First of all, it was my impression that the folks here are well trained. They are pretty well practiced in the things that they were asked to practice. So we've introduced some new things, as we've already discussed. But more importantly, this culture change thing, I think we're still in a honeymoon period where they are just grateful that the leadership of the organization communicates with them openly and honestly about things. So one of the things that I've done is renew the emphasis on practical skills training. And it is my practice, as I talk to you today, regrettably, we had a fire fatality in the Carolinas in the last 48 hours. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that hit the airways, I pushed that through, the the electronic abilities we have to every single member of the Hagerstown Fire Department, and not to be critical of any agency or personnel, but said, hey, let's just keep a learning set of eyes on this incident. This is a firefighter fatality. If it has not been your practice in the past to, other than acknowledge that a fatality occurred, let's watch this. Let's watch what the learning points are from this, and we all learn and hopefully prevent a similar occurrence here. We have talked frequently about fires that have occurred on the various shifts here. We are now in the practice of writing and publishing after-action reports by the shift commanders and, probably 4 different levels of after-action, including everything from the backstep hot wash right up through a written analysis of multiple alarm fires. So I think one of the things that I've dropped the leash on, so to speak, is it is okay to call for help. It was kind of a legacy situation here where there was great pride in the fact that, hey, we did it. We went through 3 bottles. We did whatever to control this fire. I think we all know that's not in the best interests of the health, safety, and welfare of our personnel, from cardiac events to anything else going on. So I do believe that culture-wise, they realize fully they have a fire chief that cares about each and every one of them. And that's absolutely true. I want this fire department to be the most successful fire department I know. I want to put our people into position to be most successful. And in order to do that, we have to work towards a culture change. Mm-hmm. Finally, I would say that, one of the ways that we've been able to do that here is what I call participative management, not at-my-will management. By meeting frequently these folks, by gathering input and concerns, and letting them be a part of developing change, buy-in seems to be more readily available.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me switch the gear a little bit here. I came in from the outside to 2 different organizations, and some of the things early on, some of the things that were opportunities for improvement jumped right out at me. But then when I went to the my leadership, the city manager, the elected officials, and tried to convince or inspire them to believe that there were opportunities, I often come into roadblocks because they were of the belief nothing's broken, because they're not, their phones aren't ringing off the hook. No, they're not getting complaints from the citizens, and trying to convince them that there were opportunities to improve efficiencies or safety was quite the battle, and often took me a very long time and a lot of effort of carrying the message repeatedly and repeatedly. So kind of talk us through how your approach is to how to get those you report to embrace the vision that you have for what the fire department can become, because I'm guessing some of this is going to take some financial support that then has to come from above you.
Yeah, fair enough. So my strategy in every position I've ever held of authority has been, look, there's really 3 areas we can focus. One is the minimum required by law. The second is what is required by our own policies and procedures. And then third, what are industry best practices? And as we know, they change pretty frequently. So if we start by law, we know that we have the 2 in, 2 out requirement of OSHA. I would say that here in Hagerstown, they were probably checking the box and not really following the letter of the law there. They've been very fortunate, like many fire departments, who choose to find a way to either sidestep or avoid that conversation at all. Financial resources are probably the number one problem here in this region, not just the city of Hagerstown, but there is no dedicated, sustainable revenue source for public safety, fire rescue in particular, here in Hagerstown and Washington County. That is a problem. I've put in writing to everyone that will listen that I believe is the number one goal of public safety here is we have got to wrestle that to the ground because, as you've already identified, some of this simply cannot be accomplished without resources. Now, do we meet the minimum intent of 1710 with 15 people and a shift commander? Yes, we do. Can we deploy those safely on most of our fires? Yes, we can. Do we have a building stock, big box stores, new townhouses, garden apartments, lightweight construction that, frankly, this fire department is not used to dealing with, that present an unusually high risk on the fringes of our response area that we get to with less than those 15 people on automatic aid? Yes, we do. So part of my goal is to educate the political leadership here about all those things. And as you already correctly identified, it takes a little bit of time. I've had the opportunity to submit my first capital improvements budget, which is grossly different than previous capital improvements budgets here in Hagerstown. Whether or not that will make it to the finish line by the end of May, as proposed, we just have to wait and see. And then because the leadership here issued direction to submit a balanced operating budget, we are a maintenance and services level on the operations side here, which is basically people and stuff. So year one is without any improvements there. I think we will have to tackle the sustainable revenue problem before we can tackle some of the larger problems. That doesn't mean there aren't efficiencies to be had. That doesn't mean we can't change industry best practices and adopt everything we can to be safe and high performing, even beyond where we are today.
What does sustainable revenue source look like? What is that?
Well, and so two things. One that rather than just being a drain on the operating budget of Hagerstown City's budget and Washington County, we have to have something dedicated to public safety. Now, that can come in many, many forms. It can be EMS transport fees. It can be tax base. It can be a fee for flushing toilets, and any number of other things that have been practiced around the United States. But the truth is here, it comes out of the tax base now. It's not dedicated. I think most of the citizens and the political leaders have pretty low expectations for what the fire department does. In their mind, they view it as it's still 1965, and the volunteers will come in their car and they will take care of business. And every once in a while, we lose, a couple buildings downtown, or we have a couple fire deaths, or whatever. Where I view most of that as something we can have much better outcomes with.
Now, boy, what you described there it gave me a flashback. So how do you get the elected officials to come to grips with this isn't the 1965 fire department anymore? Because a lot of them, even in the cities that I worked in, wanted to hold on to that model, which, it makes sense because it's an inexpensive model. The cheapest way to provide service is with volunteers for sure. But, that model in many, many cities, including Hagerstown, I believe, is not sustainable, and for you probably hasn't been sustainable for quite a while. But you're the new chief. The previous chief, whether they advanced these issues to the elected officials or not, I don't know. But here comes this new guy, and all of a sudden now we seemingly have all these new problems. So are these problems real, or is this just the wish list of a new chief trying to make Hagerstown like Montgomery County?
Well, I think there's a little bit of both. Certainly here in Hagerstown, like most other municipalities in the United States, the Great Recession has been a game changer. In fact, it's almost crippled the city of Hagerstown when you look at the grand scheme of reduction in real estate property values, reduction in tax base. The revenue stream just isn't here as it was once when this was a great city. We are on the upturn, I believe. There's evidence downtown that some of this is coming back, but with real grown-up problems. So in fairness to the political leaders here, I would say that their view is through a much wider lens. And even though all the things we just talked about are really, really important for the fire department, they might not be the most important to the political leadership. We're still worrying about how do we get electricity to buildings, how do we maintain underground water service, how do we develop the depressed areas of the city and provide incentives, for street maintenance and all those other things. So I think part of my job is to not only respect that, but to participate in it, and also to make sure that the employees and volunteers at the Hagerstown Fire Department realize that there is a city of Hagerstown beyond the borders of the Hagerstown Fire Department. So one of the things that we're doing is participating in every way possible to help the city with whatever comes down the street. Planned events, community risk reduction out amongst the community, being involved every day. Hagerstown has one of the, and this is a legacy program that they should be very, very proud of, one of the most aggressive smoke detector installation and maintenance programs I've ever seen. So not only have we pledged to maintain that, but expand upon it as well. And currently we have a grant in application partnering with Children's Village of Washington County here that educates every single second grader in the Washington County school system, Hagerstown included, on both law enforcement and other public safety prevention measures. So we are a very active participant in that. We send people on duty to teach at that facility, and we will be the arm of checking, installing smoke detectors with 10-year batteries, hopefully jointly funded through grant opportunity there.
Yeah, nice. Let me switch gears again here. You acknowledge that there have been some systemic challenges with attracting and retaining volunteers in the system there, and perhaps that has degraded slowly over time. Is there anything in the plans for you to try to resurrect or rebuild a volunteer base, or are you of the belief that maybe that's beyond happening now in Hagerstown?
Well, when I look around this community, I see people that are starving to participate in something meaningful. So the way I like to describe the situation is that, look, this city at this moment in time is simply not resourced to be able to expand the career firefighting force. It's really that simple. As you might expect, and as some of our listeners might expect, that is hateful news to the career workforce. Volunteers receive that message in a different way. They want to be included. So my goal there is that everybody counts, not everybody, but everybody. But with a qualifier, whether you are a career employee at the Hagerstown Fire Department or a volunteer, my expectation is that you are trained, certified, and practiced. So it is my job to provide those opportunities. So one of the programs we've implemented here is joint training during volunteer-friendly hours twice a week, Tuesday evening, Saturday day, of which the on-duty career resources participate in, as do any available volunteers, not just within the city boundary, but the companies that surround the city and run with us regularly on automatic aid dispatches. So that has had mixed results to date. I just left the meeting actually yesterday about some things we can do to tune that program up, but I hope that it really spreads and catches, and that we get people to step up from the volunteer side and say, hey, this is a good idea. I can go here and get meaningful training that will help me be the best I can be, and more importantly, guarantee their safety when they're doing a job that we've asked them to do.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see how that, what kind of success you're able to traction you're able to get with that. It seems harder and harder to maybe not to attract people to want to volunteer, but to sustain them once they realize how big of a commitment it is, how much training is required, and how much time they have to give to serving. This is, as you know and as I know, this isn't like volunteering at the church. Come in once a week and make up a food basket. This is serious work, and I'm sure that many people that come in into the volunteer ranks don't quite have a grasp as to what it's going to take to get the training and then to sustain themselves with that with that level of commitment.
Well, absolutely. So, I just get back based on my own experience. I volunteered in a number of different places. Actually, it was those qualifications that allowed me to go to college, live in a fire station close to the college, and participate in ways that otherwise I would not have been able to afford to do because of life circumstances. So if we can provide future opportunities to young volunteers, I think that's tremendous. They do provide great value to not only this community, but any community where if they're trained and certified and practiced, they do exceptional work. We have more than a handful here that have done that for many, many years, but I'm not seeing the sustainability that we once had. Now, on top of that is the expectations of the industry, not just the Hagerstown Fire Department, are much higher than ever. Here in Washington County, a 30-hour program before you can ride a fire truck. Couple that with Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, EMT, hazmat ops, AED, CPR, bloodborne pathogens. You get down that list, mm-hmm. then maintain those certifications. I would say it's harder than ever to be a competent volunteer in any system. And I give them full credit. I don't know how they squeeze those hours out. So one of my strategies is to, and I meet with the volunteer leadership as well every single month, how can I provide the best opportunities to get that done for the volunteers in the city of Hagerstown to make it the least stressful, the least impactful, and still make sure that we just don't look the other way and say, well, it's okay that you don't have this or that, that you are equal and you can participate. Very, very difficult. If you sit down with a pen and paper and add up all of the requirements of the industry right now for a volunteer, it's almost insurmountable. Almost insurmountable if you're trying to go to school, work a job, raise a family, and do all the other things that volunteers have to do to sustain themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. All right, let me change gears one more time here for you. I got so many things I want to talk with you about. It's just my mind is just spinning with the opportunities. You finished a full career with Montgomery County, and now you've come into Hagerstown after finishing a full career, and I'm pretty sure from my conversation with you that you're not looking to complete another full career in Hagerstown, but to stay there long enough to feel as though you have made an impact and helped the department become better. So the question is, have you even yet had the opportunity, maybe you haven't, but have you even yet had the opportunity to consider a succession plan for yourself as to, when you script your exit from there, that you'll have internal people ready to step up and take the reins and carry on what you have started?
Well, certainly I wouldn't be doing my job, Rich, if I wasn't looking over the next mountain. And that's the next mountain for me, both personally and professionally. I'm 61 years old. So fortunately, I have reasonably good health. My mind still works as it should, I think. And as long as those two things exist and there's no other crises in my life, I'm having a great time here with great people. They want to be the best they can be. And we have almost an unlimited pool of talent here in Hagerstown that regrettably have not always been provided opportunities. So one of the things I've done in that regard is request additional training resources to be able to expose them to things other than Hagerstown, Maryland. And that was something we took for granted in Montgomery County. I count my lucky stars every time I think about it, that the leaders I had there over the years, over many years, and the resources we had available to participate in everything from committee work to fire safety research, apparatus procurements, everything possible in our business. As you said, Montgomery County was very well known, and therefore most of the people that come out of that place were really well known. So I want to provide those opportunities to the up-and-comers here, of which there's many. And so whether I'm here for a minute or more than a minute, when we pass the baton, I hope I can recommend to the leadership in the city here that, look, we have some great internal candidates that should be considered for any opportunities to present here. Regrettably, they have been, as a result of the Great Recession, kind of knocked off their pins. Lost a deputy chief's position. They lost 3 firefighter positions. They lost a community risk reduction position and a training captain position. So if you add all those up, compared to 2008, they are minus 6 positions with no end in sight of reestablishing any of those.
That in a department with that limited of staffing, that loss of 6 positions is very, very significant. That's a healthy percentage of the overall staff that department had.
Absolutely. And you know what that does to not only your ability to maintain, but to improve, and the overall effect that has on morale. It's almost the perception is that there's just no hope. So that gets back to the whole, as I look over the landscape here, our number one job is sustainable revenue so that we can begin to restore not only what they once had here, but to grow with the environment. This is an active fire department. We go to fires here. We go to lots of EMS runs. Like many places in the country, particularly places that are depressed, we have a heroin problem here that is almost unparalleled. I would match it against some of the larger cities in our country.
That's a big problem in many places. As I travel around, that's one of the questions that I ask my hosts now is about that particular problem, and it's near epidemic in many cities, and that's another conversation for another day. I don't know that we're going to be able to necessarily bring any solutions to that, but we certainly are the providers of the care that comes along with that significant problem that we're facing in our society. All right, Chief, I've kept you for about 45 minutes now, and I appreciate you giving me the gift of so much of your time to share your experience, to share your vision, and if for so long as the sustainable revenue issue can be resolved, I think we're going to see some really, really great things coming out of Hagerstown, and probably even great things in spite of the revenue, because of the vision that you have, the experience that you have, and the cultural shift that you're making, and the team that you're building, and how you're doing it. Thank you for coming along and sharing some of that with us today.
My pleasure, Rich, and thank you for thinking of me. Any time that we can share good and bad news here in Hagerstown, we're happy to do that. There's so many good things happening here. Let me finish, if you will. We had a gentleman in his late 70s at his local business, collapsed on the floor. The secretary calls 911. Police cruiser equipped with an AED happened to be a block away. One of our local engine companies was on the air, initiated CPR right behind the AED. That gentleman is walking planet Earth today because in spite of all our difficulties and problems, the system worked. So fiercely proud of that and the people here that do that at one place or another every single day, collaborating across agencies, in spite of the money problems, in spite of all these other resources, just continue to serve the citizens.
Oh, what a great story! What a great way to end on such a uber up note. Thanks again, Chief, for coming along.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Lohr, for taking some time from your busy schedule to share your passion for the fire service and your vision for the Hagerstown Fire Department. On a side note, I also video recorded this interview, so it'll be available on the YouTube channel SAMattersTV. Just go to YouTube and type in SAMattersTV in the search box. I have about 50 videos there of various things that you can watch. You can watch the recording of this interview. Granted, there's nothing very exciting or thrilling about watching me sitting at a chair with a headset on and a microphone. But if you want to watch it instead of listening to it, you can do that. If you have someone you'd like to see interviewed as a guest on the show, contact me through the SA Matters website. Click on the Contact Us link. If you've experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others, contact me through the SA Matters website. Contact Us link. Think about it for a moment. The lessons learned from your near miss could save the life of another responder. If you want to share your experience, reach out to me. If you haven't subscribed to the SA Matters Radio podcast yet, please consider doing that by going to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and searching SA Matters Radio on iTunes or Stitcher. While you're there, please consider leaving some feedback for the show. If you like the show, give it a 5-star review. It's really important because that inspires me to work harder for you. A lot of time and effort goes into producing, recording, editing, lining up the guests and such, and your feedback lets me know that you appreciate the show. In case you didn't know, I've written 3 books on situational awareness. Situational Awareness Matters Volumes 1, 2, and 3 contain critical lessons on improving your situational awareness in your high-risk decision-making. If you want a copy, you can go to the SAMatters.com store or get them on Amazon. I recently added a donate button on the bottom of the SA Matters homepage. If you're interested in supporting this mission, please consider a one-time or recurring donation. All the proceeds are reinvested back into the content creation and research on topics related to situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. And thank you in advance for those who have shown your support of the mission. I really do appreciate it. If you're not a member yet of the SA Matters community of learners, please consider joining the over 5,000 people connected on the SA Matters community and receive the monthly newsletter, which is free. And for those who sign up, I'll send you a special report called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. To sign up, just go to the red box on the right side of the SA Matters homepage. We can get connected also on social media. If you want to get connected on Twitter, you can follow at Rich Gasaway or at SA Matters on Twitter. Between those 2 accounts are almost 17,000 followers of our message on Twitter. So thank you for getting connected with me there as well. You can also find me on Facebook and by joining the private Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/SA Matters. You can search for LinkedIn for Rich Gasaway on LinkedIn as well. Well, that's it. Episode 107 is complete. Thank you to my guest, Hagerstown Fire Chief Chief Lohr. Thank you to our podcast sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to all of our live event hosts. And thank you, our listeners, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit SAMatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.